So
I know that anything can happen when you're working from home, right?
I know. And the two of them, every time, there's a key moment, they go.
Always at those times.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Good, good. Okay, let's get started anyway. And let me just share the screen a second here. And let me get my chat function back up again. Okay, so today what I'm going to do is, it's only 30 minutes. What I'm going to do is share some ideas with you. And then I'll open it up for questions and answers as we go afterwards as well. And today's really the whole thing is about as a leader, your how is who. Okay, your how is not how, your how is who. And I like to talk a little bit about that topic. And I'd also like to talk about why people don't engage their who's. In other words, why don't you delegate as a leader to engage those who's? Because if you think about it, that's where all your power is in there. And if you look on the left-hand side, that phrase, it sounds like Dr. Seuss, but if you don't have a who, the who is always you. Okay, so as a leader, our job is not necessarily doing everything. It's more about motivating the people that are doing. Okay, so these are the things I like to cover today. I have a number of people couldn't make it at the end. They sent me a message, so it's good they get the recording as well. So welcome everybody. And let me ask you a question first and use the chat function to come back. Okay, so if you know what you want to achieve, you know why you want to achieve it, and you know by when you want to achieve it, what's your next thought as a leader? So type into the chat function, what's your next thought? Once you know what, why, and when, what's your next thought as a leader? Okay, let's see what people say. Just type in what your answer is. Map it out. Yep. Sonny says how. Execute. Yep. Who do I need to on board? Yep. Yep. Who will help me achieve it? Yeah. So the real key as a leader is to not think how, but to think who. Okay? Because if you're thinking who, you can let go of it faster. It's the fastest way to get rid of something. But if you're thinking how by yourself, you're limited by your own knowledge and experiences. Therefore, your solution could be limited. The faster you get another who involved, the faster you could get some ideas to have a better solution. So I don't know if you've ever been around a high exec and they have an issue and they say, oh, call such and such in, call such and such in, get such and such on the phone. They want as much brain power on it as they can right away. But the thing about that, the more you get included right away, the more people you can delegate parts of it right away so it never sticks with you. It's kind of like a good leader's desk is slanted back at you. Nothing sticks. Everything goes back. And when someone leaves the office, they never leave anything behind. They take an action. So it's so important to think who. And also think about it this way. If you think how and you take it halfway and you take the idea halfway and then you give it to your people, it never feels like theirs. It feels like yours. And so one of the goals of leadership really is to get who's around you and make it feel like it's theirs. Because the more they feel like it's theirs, the more ownership they'll take, the more action they'll take, the more they'll try to solve problems on their own, and they won't always be coming to you. So I found that you have to think who. Now let's just give me a story how I came up with this. In fact, I had a client who sent me an email, and the subject line of the email was "My how is who," and he wrote the email. He said, "I figured out what my job is." He said, "My job, is my how is who. My how is not how." And he says, "Let me share, what happened to me." He had a huge problem. His first instinct was to call his best person in and tell them how to fix it. But he heard my voice in his head because I was coaching him for a couple months. And so he heard my voice. He called his best person in and he asked one of the best questions you can ask all the time. He said, could you come back tomorrow morning with a couple options, a few options as to how we could fix this problem? Because when you ask your people for options, you now have set up an environment where the answer comes from them and you can coach them towards what could be the best answer. So his person came back the next morning, came back with three options. They had a good discussion about it and they picked one together, and his best person went out and fixed the problem very well. So he thought about this and he said, my job is not how. I pay my people for the how. My job is enabling, growing the who's so they can do more on their own. And if you think about what I showed you on the first slide, if you don't have a who, the who is always you. So what I found is that we have to be thinking who right away. And we have to think being who by ourselves too, because the faster you get good advice, the better you get a solution. I don't know about you, but sometimes if I pick up the phone and ask for advice for 5 minutes, 5 minute advice, it could sometimes save me 5 hours. Okay. So think about this. The right people around you with the right knowledge and so forth create better solutions quicker. The right people around you right away, you can delegate things quicker to them as well. So keep in mind for yourself, whether you're leading people or not, always try to think who before how, because the right who will always give you a better how. Okay? So what, why, and when? Don't think how, think who, and think of your job not as how, but motivating the how and finding the who's that will do it. Okay? So that's the first thing. Now, well, let's just go through a few things with you in terms of why people don't let go. Why don't they use their who's? Okay. And I found there's three main reasons why people don't let go. The first reason is I like doing it too much myself, right? So I don't want to let it go. So let me ask you a question. Type into the chat function. Is leadership always a fun job to do? Type into the chat. Is leadership always a fun job to do? Hannah says, nope. Yep. Probably yep. Freddie says, no. Yeah, it's not always fun, right? So, we want to have some fun. So what do? We drop down and we do things we enjoyed in the past or we enjoy doing, and we do it ourselves. And we prevent our best people from growing. So think about it. If you're doing it yourself, you're probably in your comfort zone. You enjoy it. You're not struggling. So you're not learning, and you're just sort of enjoying the moment and so forth, versus you could be giving it to your people, maybe push them out of their comfort zone and force them to grow. So I think a good thing to think about is as you keep climbing, you free room in your job, by letting go of things you'd like to do, because you can't just hold on to everything, because you won't be able to do your leadership job. So think about this, is that if you're not letting go of what you like to do, you're slowing your people's growth, but you're also slowing your growth. Okay. Now, the second reason is you need to feel in control, right? I need to know everything. I need to evolve in everything to feel in control. But the higher you climb, the more it's impossible for you to know everything. So if you're spending all your time knowing everything, you're not doing, right? And if knowing everything was the key to success, then the librarians would be the most successful people in the world. But it's not what you know, it's what you and your team do. So I found that it's so important to have a little thought process for yourself and think, what do I need to feel in control? Because even if you shouldn't do it, but psychologically, if you need it to feel in control, you'll continue keep doing it. So it's kind of like you have to prevent yourself from being yourself, and really thinking about what is the information that I need, plus trusting my people, and then I don't have to be involved in everything. So, a good way to start sometimes with an organization is to develop your KPIs. Because if you have a set of KPIs and one of the metrics doesn't look well, you kind of know where to go to look for that. In other words, the best leaders have a set of, say, 5 to 7 KPIs that if they look at that, they know within 90% the health of their business. And if something is wrong, they know where to look. So, I have the most fun when I ask companies and I say, give me a list of your KPIs. And if it has a page 2, I know they're in trouble because they're not very key. They're just too long. So keep in mind this, you got to let go. Micromanagement has a speed limit. And if you're, if you're trying to do everything yourself and tell anybody, you're managing to your head capacity to keep everything straight to tell people what to do. You're not using your team's capacity. And then the last one here is you wouldn't know what to do. I get this a lot. People say, well, if I let go, what do I do? you know, and so forth. But the role of a leader is to enable and align the team to deliver. So if you're really not aligning the team to deliver, and you're down in the middle, always pulling people together and so forth, and not enabling them to align themselves and so forth, then you're in the middle of everything and you're setting the pace for everything. So the job of a leader, as the higher you climb, it's more motivation, enabling, alignment, focusing people, and enabling them to do more on their own. So for everything they can't do by themselves, then you have to be there. So so keep in mind that aspect and say, what is your job? Now, quick question for you before I move on. If I ask you to create a list of all the things you could never ever delegate as a leader, only you can do it, your team can't do it, would it be a long list or would it be a very short list? Type into the chat function. Would it be a long list or a short list that you could never ever delegate? Freddie says very short. Yep, yep. Vicky, short. It's going to be a very short list. So by default, a lot more things can be delegated than that way. And you think about this. I've done, I guess now about 15 sessions on letting go with CEO mentoring groups. And I always ask them at the beginning, list up all the reasons why you don't let go. And always, at least 80% of the reasons had nothing to do with their people, had nothing to do with anybody else but themselves, their own fears, their own insecurities, their own idea of what a leader does. Okay. So the thing is, you really have to figure out how you can let go. Sometimes you just have the wrong people and you have to engage better people. But you really have to think about who and enabling your who's first. Because the faster you enable a who, the more you can get rid of it. And if you haven't enabled the who's, then by default, you're always going to do it, right? So if you always say, I don't have time to delegate, or I don't have time to train someone up, you will never have time for the rest of the time because you're going to be doing it yourself. So those are the 3 reasons why people don't let go. Let me ask you a quick question. So number 1 is the like doing. Number 2 is feeling in control with the information. And the third is you wouldn't know what to do. 1, 2, or 3, which one is the most popular reason why people say I don't let go? 1, 2, or 3. Type into the chat function. Yeah. Everybody's saying 2. Yeah. The main reason why people don't let go is the feeling of control. So find a way to feel in control without knowing everything. Okay, have good systems, have good people around so you don't have to do that. Okay, so the other thing to think about this is, it's about micromanagement. So if you think about if you're doing it, you're doing your people's job and you're not doing your job. So if you look at it that way, every time you're micromanage, you're doing less of your job. And that doesn't sound very good. Okay. Also, you're slowing your people's growth. But the other thing is that you're training more micromanagers because they're learning how to lead from you or they're learning how to micromanage from you. So if you think about it, you not only have a present problem, you have a future problem because now you're creating more micromanagers who will do the same thing for the future. So The key thing would think about here is when you're not thinking who and those things, the question is this: who's managing who? Because if you have to be around all the time to tell people what to do and make it work, then your people are really managing your time because of the way you're leading and you need to be there. They're putting pressure on you. So the thing is that leadership is front loaded. You enable your people, you focus them, right? You put the environment in, you align them for them to do more on your own, and you're in more control of your time. If you haven't done the upfront work, then you need to be there every minute to answer their questions, and actually they're controlling your time, you're not controlling your time. Okay, so it comes back to enabling those who's. The other thing to think about is that you have to push your ego aside. Okay, if you're really going to engage the who's, it can't be you. It can't be I'm going to celebrate. I want to take credit and everything. The team has to. I mean, the best leaders basically say is all the successes is a team, and all the failures are mine. The blame is mine. They're never pushing the blame to others. It's my blame, but it's the team's success that way. So, try to find a way to put your ego aside. And the more you can push that ego aside, and the more you think about your team, the more you're going to give them the confidence. In fact, one of the things I found with being success in leadership, especially thinking who and those things, is leave my people feeling confident, leaving it feeling it's theirs, and confident people take more action. But if you want to be the hero and you want all your people to depend on you and not be confident, they're always going to come to you, right? So you want them confident to do it on their own as much as you can. So think about pushing your ego aside. Okay? The other thing is that the big thing I found is it's how you get your buzz. In other words, if you're really going to be a great leader, you should have more pride in seeing your people do it than you doing it. All right. So you should get a more bigger buzz seeing your people do it. You don't have to be involved than your people do, than you doing it. In fact, you're a real strong leader when you're comfortable hiring people better than you and seeing someone, and you take tremendous pride of seeing them doing it better than you used to do it. Then you're really a strong leader because you're finding that your role is not the doing, your role is motivating even better doing. And think of it this way: if you hire great people around you, you won't be tempted to tell them what to do. Because if they know better than you won't be tempted to tell them what to do. But not maybe they can't do what you can do, which means align people, focus people to deliver even more. So the thing is that a good question to ask yourself if you're a leader: where do you get your buzz from the role? Because if you get too much of your buzz from doing, you're going to keep doing. If you get more of a buzz from seeing your people do, or seeing the organization do more, the team do more, then you're going to do more of that. Because we basically, when under pressure, we slide to where we get the buzz and we avoid what we don't want to do. Okay. So think about those. And then the last one here is, think about the people around you, because it's the who which extend your influence and increase your power through an organization. So the more you can engage the right people, the more you're reaching out and extending your influence as you go. The more you have to be involved to create that influence, the more it's limiting, because it's only 24 hours in the day that you have to do that. So the thing I found is, if you pick the right people around you, especially if you're running a project or doing anything else, if you pick the right people around you who can influence, your power extends out very, very quickly. But if you pick needy people around you who are always needing you, then basically your power is not going anywhere, and you're always having to be everywhere to do that. So the key is picking people who can make good decisions. Okay, people who can make good decisions will always give you more time. Because think about this. Getting a question. When you lose someone in your team who's been making decisions and you have a replacement who's not as strong, you lose personal life. Because now you have to do the part of that job that you didn't have before, because now you have to make decisions for them. So think about that as well. The who always extends your influence and your power in any type of organization and environment. Okay. So just a couple things to finish, and then I'll open up for questions. Remember, if you don't have a who, the who is always you. So I would say try to make thinking who a habit. Think who right away, and never underestimate the power of a quick 5-minute conversation with the right person. Okay. It'll save you time if you just think who personally that way. And then a couple things to finish off. If you need help developing your who's, let me know, because I do some leadership development work with a combination of these type of things that you see on the screen. And it's a way that really makes the learning stick, and it creates the thinking and the behaviors in people, the mindset and the habits to really go into the organization, and guys and your leaders to become great role models. Remember, if your leaders are micromanagers, they're making future micromanagers. If your leaders are leaders, they're creating future leaders. Okay. Now, last thing is, here's my contact details, but I have a present for you guys. I've created the 20 days of delegation, 20 1-minute videos that you can work with, that you can watch, that help you to delegate better. And so it covers something different. The first and the 20th is sort of a beginning and a summary, but everything else is covering something different about delegation. So if you would like to have these videos come to you every day, the 1-minute video, send me a WhatsApp to my mobile number there, and I will send to you each day one of the videos and a comment about that in terms of the things you have to do to be a better delegator. So the better delegator you are, the more you're going to use your who's, and the more time you're going to have for yourself. Okay. So what I'll do is stop sharing, open it up for questions. I'll put the mobile number in the chat so you have lost that in case you want to have it. And first question for you guys first. What's your number one takeaway from what I covered today? So if you can type into the chat function your number one takeaway. Let's see what people. Always have a who. Yep. Get out of your own way. Yep. That's for a good one. Yeah. Anyone else? You got to hire the right people. I'll tell you, the number one criteria you need in people is business judgment, so they can make decisions. Because if they can't make the decisions, who needs to make them? You. Okay. So questions, comments from what I covered? Anybody have anything? Good. Good, Tosh. How you doing?
Good, Mark. This is probably, as I was saying, getting out of my own way. So the issue is, we're kind of leaders for a reason, because we make those decisions, or whether they're wrong or right, or we learn from them or not. And it tends to be that the people that we're working with will then action out whatever decision you are. I totally get about them, making it theirs and coming back with suggestions. But I think that's the thing I keep going in a circle in my mind. The decisions are coming from me. They might make suggestions, but ultimately it'll be my final call.
No, well, you can't make all the decisions. Does Bezos make all the decisions for Amazon? No. So Bezos basically said too, he says, I have limited capacity each day to make quality decisions. So you look at people like Barack Obama, look at Steve Jobs and everything. They tend to wear the same clothes because they want to reduce the decisions they have to make each day. So I don't have to make decisions on my clothes. So the thing is that Bezos basically, towards the end of his career, he figured out, I only have the capacity to make 3 or 5 really good decisions each day on anything. So he tries to limit that on where he decides. If you're trying to decide everything as a leader and your people are executing, then you're just basically creating one of those tearaway numbers at your door, and they just keep coming to you for the decision. Yeah.
Well, one quick sneaky further question then, Mark, is how
Yep.
does that translate to SMEs? I get it when they're massive corporations and you have lots of people working around, but let's say that's more an SME level. How does it work then?
Well, you still have to do it because, in essence, if you want to sell the company in the future, all the decision can't be in the owner, because when the owner goes, all the decision making goes. In fact, you get less money for the company. And then the second thing is, a company will pay you money, they'll give you less, but then they'll also say, I'm not going to give you all the money now. I'm going to give you money based on the earnings stay consistent, and then I'll prorate it, and then maybe you get less money if they can't put the decision making in fast enough when you left. It's so important to delegate decisions. Yeah. Anybody else?
Mark, if I can, and if I don't go before someone else.
Yep.
So one question is, how do you build the judgment, if you have to build one, when you join a team? So when, imagine there is already a team and you get to lead this team as a newcomer. How do you build the level of trust that ensure you can do that quickly?
To do it quickly, what I found, and I had to do it in a number of cases, is to both test and build judgment. I would give people projects, because projects I can put boundaries around. I can see, so I can trust them with boundaries. I don't have to give them something and go crazy. And what I used to do is this, is whenever I went to a new organization, I figured out who are all my high potentials at every level of the organization. And then I started finding projects for them. That means I had small, medium, large projects. I was both testing judgment and being able to coach judgment at the same time. And I was getting to see if I could trust these people in the future or not. Because the earlier you feel if you can, if you can trust someone's judgment, the more you can then decide, okay, I keep developing it, or I try to get rid of this person.
and thank you. Yeah, very useful. And maybe a corollary question. You said good leaders, good managers have a short set of KPIs, and I agree. And I think they normally tell 90% of whether you are in the right direction. How do you measure the behavioral set of these people? Because you could have that the project does very well, KPIs are perfect, but in the end, something could be wrong in the way people, in the organization to achieve this project leave. No?
Well, yeah, I mean, the KPIs is just one part of it. A culture is shared expectations. Shared expectations. What are we trying to achieve? The KPIs and so forth. But how are we going to behave in achieving them? So you have to address the values. But you can't just address the values by themselves, because to be honest, values is a non-word. You say, I have a value of trust. You can't see trust. You can only see the behavior that demonstrates trust. So I found in the most effective organizations, they discuss what are the behaviors we want to see in each other, right? And so when you discuss the behavior, now we hold each other accountable on the behaviors. Because if we to say, oh, let's hold each other accountable on trust, your view of trust could be slightly different than my view of trust, and therefore we're holding ourselves accountable, right? So I think you want to discuss behaviors. I don't know if you ever heard of a company called Farfetch. Farfetch floated on the stock exchange for billions or something. It's a high-end boutique clothing and all different things they sell online. And they have a value called ambition. And I had a group of them, a part of the company one time, and we brainstormed 37 behaviors that demonstrate ambition. And we picked 5 that the ones that are most key, so that they could say, this is what ambition means to us. Yeah. Anything else? Any other question? Yeah, Catherine.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Mark. Hi, Mark. Good evening from Tokyo.
He's coming from Tokyo.
Good evening. Good evening. It's 9:30 p.m. here. I'm sorry I was late.
No worries.
Lovely to see you again after such a long time. In Japan, often people will not want to take up leadership. So you'll see it in them, but how do you instill that kind of leadership in people when they feel like they're not worthy of it? They're not ready for it. Have you got any tips on that?
Yeah, I tell you, what I tried to do is I tried to get them to think of options. And so if they came up with credible options, they'd have more confidence. Now in Japan, they don't want to pick it because they want the boss to pick the option. But at least I tried to ask them for options. And in fact, when I was leading in Japan, because I had for 2.5 years, I had an operational group and I had only Japanese below me. I needed them to have the consensus process, but I couldn't have them discuss 100 options. So I worked with them and discussed and rationalized like 2 or 3 options. And then I let them do their consensus process without me. And then they could do that. But what I found is that, here's a tip. I found if my people can't think of more than a few options, they probably don't know their job well enough. Because today's world, there's, there's no simple answers. There's only options. And some are executable now, some could be different types of resources. So I found the most powerful question in leadership is asking people, what options do you think we have? And why would one be better than the other? It shows to me the depth of their understanding of the organization and the goals. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yep, Anik.
Trying to unmute myself. Thank you, Mark. That was very useful, as always. I now run a small business, so the issue of leadership is different for me in that I still need to get the who because I need people to support me, but they're different from when I was in corporates. And I have a question about the corporate world from your experience. So I agree with you. You're only as strong as your weakest link, and you need people who take ownership and all this. How do you deal as a leader with the bright sparks who now are so good that they want your job?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because that's a good problem to have, right? The thing is that, if people go sometimes, that's not necessarily a bad thing sometimes because you extend your influence into other companies. But what I found is this, and both for myself and leading people like this, is your best people want to keep growing. So you need to give them challenges that will keep them increasing their potential. Because if they're not growing inside the company, they're looking at every day they don't grow, they're less valuable outside or in other positions. So the thing is that the most underutilized discussion with your high potentials is potential. Get them to understand their potential, because oftentimes what will make them grow is something they are trying to avoid doing. In other words, you give them a project or a task that involves a lot of conflict, and they're going to want to say, no, Anik, you deal with that. I want the easy stuff. But the thing is that, the higher you climb, the more your job is about influence and resolving conflict than it is about knowing the best thing, the best technology to use or whatever. So I would say with your best people, talk potential. And then you give them something ugly to do and they go, yes, I'll take it because I'm going to grow. But if you haven't talked potential and you give them something ugly to do, they're going to say you're dumping on me. So if you talk potential, you can give the ugly. Yeah. Tosh, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you something that you said to Catherine just now, Mark, and it was
Yeah.
about if you give somebody options and they don't come back with certain options, they don't probably know their job well enough.
Yep.
Thinking about that, because there's a difference between doing your job and actually the way that you think, because that's what we're actually, even everyone in this room, we're attending this because we want to think differently about and how we apply to a problem we're having. And obviously we all see life through our own individual lenses.
Yep.
So even when I was a lawyer before I started my own business, I did my job really well, but I didn't think as a leader. that came later through different experiences or failures or successes and so forth. So in short, my question is, you know, my people, for example, very smart, lovely people to work with, but I realized that they don't know how to think. I know that sounds terrible, but you know what I mean? They don't know how to think about it in a bigger picture way, a balcony view kind of way. So what do you do with that?
I think you have to force them to do it. And if they don't want to do it, you probably don't have the right people, because you'll be always giving them the same work, always for the next years. The thing is what's very interesting in the corporate world is actually you're expected to think like the next level before you get there. And in fact, in most companies, your pay is slightly behind where your ability is, because you always need to keep climbing. You know, you would never, if you were reported to me and you weren't thinking in terms of way I'm thinking, at least a little bit, I'm thinking you're not ready for the next level. You can't say, okay, give me the money and then my brain will show up. You can't say that, right? You gotta be thinking that way. So the thing is that everybody should know how they do their job, and they should have enough thought process to say, what are the options around doing it better? That's for sure. Because else all improvement has to be driven from the boss, and that's too slow. Yeah.
Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hey, we'll take one more if there's any other thing. I know we're over, but I'll take another question if there's anybody else has one. Okay, so guys, remember this. Think who, not how. For two reasons too. One is personal. The better you have a who around you, the better ideas you have around you right away, it saves you time. Second one is the faster you get a who involved, the faster you can get rid of it. Okay, so thanks guys. Great seeing everybody again. Great to see you, Catherine. Thanks, Anik.
Thank you, Mark. That was great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mark.
Have
Thank
a
you.
great rest of the week.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.